Hello everybody, this is Dia Damson and today I am going to do a Monet with watercolor. That's not how he painted. He was using oils and pastel, but we are going to try to do a Monet with watercolor, and I picked an easy one, which is water lilies, one of his bazillion paintings. So what I did is sketching the canvas, but before we really begin to paint, please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you get notifications for future videos. And if you like this one, don't forget to give us thumbs up. Thanks. So all right, let's start with painting this, but it was a simple sketch. I just did few ovals. Some of them are partial, which represent the leaves, and also two funny looking flowers, because if you see his painting of the lilies, the flowers are not really in detail, so it makes it really easy for us to do something and kind of pretend this is a flower and not stress about it. So my background color is the water, but the water is not blue. In this case, the water is kind of greenish. So I mixed ochre with a little bit of blue and a little bit of black and created this murky looking greenish color that it's working very well with the water that I need to fill in. His color is much darker than mine, but since we're doing watercolor, we are going to change a few things slightly, but of course we're going to try to keep it as close as possible to Monet's way of painting. So we're going to use tons of brush strokes and tons of layers, which means we're going to have to move around a lot around, so we give chance for one area to dry before we come back. So we cannot really play too much in the same area for a long time, because if it's wet, the watercolor is just gonna start moving around. So use tons of little brush strokes to fill in an area. Don't just use one, but kind of bounce around the canvas to create almost like a specks of brush stroke versus one brush stroke. So it's just impressionistic way of painting. And again, I am going to, this is a purple one. I don't know why it's purple, but we're just gonna keep it the way he did. So that's my explanation for that. It could be a shadow, it could be a leaf like underneath the water. I'm not quite 100% sure, but maybe one day I'll ask. So I'm gonna go around and start filling in the leaves, but the background is still wet, so I'm gonna leave that tiny little bit of white area, which I'll come back and fill it in later. But for now I'll leave it there because I don't want that green to mix with my background green, which is a different green. So I am going to move I guess faster in a way, so we're not wasting too much time when we are doing this video. But if you decide to paint this or try to do something at home and you don't have to paint all at once, you can take a break and leave it alone for a while. But again, just add little color at the time, switch around between green and green. Make your greens with yellow, make your greens with blue, make your greens with even sometimes black. Tiny bit of black will help inside your greens. You can use white. The white's gonna create a colder green, but you can use different types. Whatever blues you have there, you can use it for your greens, and just make kind of a different brush strokes, different colors, and make it more Monet-ish. So yeah, so first layer, it's gonna be a while until we fill this in, but it's going to be fun, and you're going to see how this is going to grow on us. So yeah, big spot of paint, and I'm just going to scoop it out. So if that happens, no big deal. Just use clean and not wet brush and kind of move it around, or just take it away. And again, you're gonna see how I do one little area at a time and kind of leave a lot of tiny dots in brush strokes. So that's gonna be the whole time. It's gonna be the name of the game. The background is getting a little dry, which means I can get closer to the edges and not be afraid that those green colors will start mixing. So that's good news. So it really depends. Sometimes the weather, if it's hot and dry, your watercolor will dry much faster. But if it's humid, it might take a little longer. So it really tests your color. Just take a break, make some tea, make a coffee, go out for a walk. So I'm gonna get a little very light mixture of white and blue and create this petal looking things on the flowers, which look like spikes right now, but that's what we need. We just need to start from somewhere and create a little bit of the element. And again, this is going to be many layers until the end, so it's gonna be much slower than what we'll do if we're painting with acrylics or oil in a way to create a flower. So this red was not my favorite, which is the primary red with white. It just gave me that very light red. Did not like it, so I went for more burgundy red, much darker red, and I mixed it with the white, and I really like that pink better. Because at one point I'm gonna add a little bit of blue in it to create the shadow. So that pink, which you can use magenta if you have magenta and white, and create that much better pink than with the primary red. And you're gonna see bouncing around from the flowers to the leaves to the water. So it's gonna be a non-stop movement all over our little canvas. And sometimes when you have bigger canvas, actually you have more space between filling one area than the other, so it will dry probably much faster. But we're working for I think this is almost like 5x7, something like that area. So that's kind of what we're working with. Adding a little bit of a shadow on one side and just adding a color here and there. Now some people can mask the area they're painting with tape. I don't usually do that because if I'm scanning my art, that can be cleaned up or cut out or whatever. If I am framing it, usually goes behind matting, so that is totally fine. I don't mask my area. Now when I use tape, I usually use it to stretch paper when it's big, versus masking it to protect it from paint to go around. I sometimes prefer even to see the paint coming outside the surface. I don't know why, it's just me. But if you want a clean area around your painting, you can use washi tape or you can use painter's tape to do that. And one little trick, when you're removing it, rub your finger over the tape to kind of activate the glue, so you're making it a little bit warm, and then very gently pull it away, and that is not going to take the paper or rip the paper or takes part of the paper with the tape. And that's it. So you see how I start adding a little bit of purple, a little bit of red in the flowers. So they don't look like flowers yet because I'm kind of starting backwards. I'm starting with the shadow or parts that are not really with the flower, but I'm starting more with the shadows, and then the rest will come kind of later. So once we start putting the center of the flower in, then it's gonna start looking more like a water lily plant. But until then, we just have those two messy blobs kind of in the middle of our canvas. But I'm really liking what is going on with the background and also the leaves. So we're gonna make them slightly darker, but we're definitely not gonna make it as dark as Monet's for many reasons. The difference in the paint, and I just want to keep it a little bit lighter. So that's it. I guess personal. But again, brush strokes, break the brush strokes. Bounce the brush stroke on the canvas so it's not one long brush strokes, but it's many tiny brush strokes creating a brush stroke. So I am scooping out white, and I'm going to apply white on certain areas, and actually it's working really well. I didn't think that I'm gonna do that, but it's working, so I will do it. So pretty much the brush is not wet, and I am just applying a little bit of the white, which will actually help because it gives me a little bit of a texture, especially for the leaves or petals of the water lily flower. So that will work really nicely. So it's a little bit more paint than what I will usually use for a watercolor painting, but I think it works, so you can try it and see what happens. And once we start putting the center, a little yellow center, it's going to start becoming a flower. So do you see how that changed real fast? Now it looks like a flower. We can totally fake it that this is a flower, even if we don't add anything anymore, but we will. So we're gonna add a few more layers and make a little more petals around to make it look like a flower. So the top flower has more pinkish in it, so we're gonna figure it out. There's still a lot of space around it and a lot of shadow is missing, so the shadow will really give us a little bit more of the shape. And it has 4, which I just added this, 4 smileys on the bottom, which represent 4 petals kind of surrounding the flower. So you're gonna see how those 4 little smileys on the bottom will give us that illusion of a flower in one point. So moving slowly. And those smileys are petals that are kind of towards us, so we don't see a full petal, we just see a petal that is really facing us and has very long perspective. And the more we're framing, the more it looks like what it should be looking. Let's add a little more bluish and add spots. And because my initial first, second, third layer was not just one color, it's becoming easier to add other colors because those uneven brush strokes underneath are pretty much helping with the layers that are coming up that are still transparent. So there might be changing part of the colors but still leaving specks. So this leaf on the top, I'm observing it and I'm like, it's unclear if it's 1 or 2. It's just a little bigger than what I did, so I'm going to enlarge it, but it's very unclear on his painting what exactly it is. So one of the water lilies flowers is much pinker than the other one, so that's what we're looking at. And I need to open that one a little bit towards us, to be looking more towards us, not up. So the closer one, we're gonna have to change the perspective a little bit, but I'm still adding shadow, so the shadow is going to help a ton. And of course, watercolor, so we're moving slowly and adding layers after layers. Now, honestly, can we stop right here? Absolutely, we can. We can stop anywhere we want, but we're gonna push it for a little bit more and see what happens. Still working on those shadows, but there you go. So I'm going to open this front a little bit more, so it's going to be looking towards us. Yeah, I need to just make it point towards us, so I need to get that yellow a little bit closer. And you see, as soon as I opened that yellow, and I'm gonna have to close it a little bit on probably the top and push it away, it all of a sudden it changed where that flower is looking at. So I'm gonna use some white and kind of move that top yellow down and keep the bottom yellow closer to the bottom, and that will change the where the flower is looking at. So one is looking kind of away from us, and the other one is looking towards us. I love this background color. Even if you're painting leaves with that background color, it's going to look great. You see how little by little we added maybe like few spots here and there to create the flowers. Flowers are not necessarily the easiest thing to paint, or I guess depends on the flower, but I think we're done. So let's sign, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give us thumbs up, and I will see you next time, maybe for another watercolor Monet or something else. Thanks.